Okay. Good morning, Geauga County, Lake County, northeastern Ohio, and all places around the world that people are streaming Voice of Geauga, where we're coming to you Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. as you get your coffee, as you drive to work. And today we're going to have some interesting topics. I'm Skip Claypool, and with me I've got Jonathan Broadbent.
Good morning, all.
Jonathan. Last night I went to a senior night at West G. The Rotary and the West G High School hosted the seniors a dinner to recognize senior citizens, not senior students, senior citizens. And the room was filled. I'm guessing a couple hundred people. And
Good.
the students from West G entertained them with the band, with some people from the play. It was a fun, interesting night. I parked cars for the seniors, and I had an opportunity to meet every senior that came through the door and talk to them. Many of them I knew. And as I was telling Jonathan before the program started, I had no less than 5 people come up to me and say, "We really love the radio program. We really love the paper." And so please keep them up.
Excellent.
I had one lady hand me $20 and say, "I don't have much money, but here's what I have, and try to keep this on." I was touched by that. And so, with that said, I'm going to shout out to the audience. You can help to support this program. We need sponsors, number one. We currently have two, but we need more sponsors than that. And you can help to direct sponsors to us. People are listening to the program. I know that because I was talking to a bunch of them last night. And you can also support us directly by going to the voiceofgeauga.com website. There are QR codes there. You can make a blanket donation of however much you think you can afford, how much value you get out of this program, or you can do a monthly subscription thing. But if we can't cover the cost of the program, we can't continue it. And so that's the last I'll say about that for a little while. Anyway, we are being
Skip, let me interject if I could. I
sure.
think maybe I'm not fully awake yet, but I think you may have said voiceofgeauga.org. Isn't it .com?
Yes,
Or do you have both domains?
no. I did say .com. At least I believe I said .com. If I said
Okay.
that
And
already, it was
then
in there. So.
one question for you. I opened up the website while you're talking. So if somebody did want to donate, oh, I see it right here. If you go to voiceofgeauga.com and just scroll down just a little bit, there's a heading funding, and underneath there's a big blue button that says donate. We'd love to have your financial support. It's what keeps us operational.
Yeah, sound a little bit like NPR, which kind of makes me ill, but we're not. We are not. We are the farthest thing from NPR, National Public Radio.
Proud of it.
Maybe we could reach out and get some government funding.
No.
Not.
No.
We'll reach out to the county and see if the county wants to fund this
No.
program partially.
Then we have to bow to their wishes for what we talk about. I don't like that.
Yeah. You know, as much as we talk about the Maple Leaf and Sugar Valley Times, they ought to be donating to this program. But we do have a great sponsor. Our sponsors are really fantastic. Red Eft Arborist, who you can reach out to 440-850-4968. Andrew Blasky and his team. He's actually going to be on the radio program tomorrow morning with us. And so he's going to be talking about trees and other stuff. Andrew's a very interesting guy. He's a little nervous about coming on the program, but I've known him for a while, and outside of being a great arborist and being able to take care of your trees and other things, he's just a fun guy. And so a wealth of knowledge about landscaping and taking care of stuff around your house and a whole bunch of other topics. And so it'll be a fun program. So tune in tomorrow morning, and you'll be able to meet the owner operator of Red Eft Arborist. And
Cool.
as I've said, if you're listening to this program and you need something done with your trees, give Andrew a call at 440-850-4968. I think you'll be happy with his service. And well, it's a great value at what he does. And so reach out to him. Tell him that you heard about him from this program. That'll help us. And by the
The
way,
burning question I have, Skip, and I plan to bring it up tomorrow morning in our discussions with Andrew, is revolve around fruit bearing trees. I'd love to learn more about apple trees, pear trees, the sorts of trees that we can grow around here that are edible fruit bearing. Because I mean, we know we've got sages and a number of different local vineyards and things. We can never know too much about how to grow those kinds of things here locally.
well, and interesting. This show's going to cover a couple of different issues or topics today. One of the things that we did at the Planning Commission is we sent a letter to our state legislators. They're passing a law to make maple syrup an agricultural product. Apparently, it has not been designated an agricultural product, so therefore it couldn't qualify for tax credits and so forth, as other businesses do. And so we actually approved, sent a letter to the state legislature to ask them to approve maple syrup, which is a big deal here in northeastern Ohio, as an agricultural product. But as I was doing some homework on that issue, I've discovered you can make syrup out of lots of different types of trees. So I have birch syrup that I purchased when I was up in Alaska. You can make syrup out of black walnut. You can make syrup out of a whole bunch of different kinds of trees, hardwood trees, which we have here in northeastern Ohio. And so I asked the question of the Planning Commission, are we just covering maple syrup, or are you discriminating against the black walnut syrup people? Um, I don't think there are any out there, but a couple of the people that make syrup know that. They said, "Oh yeah, you can make syrup out of all kinds of trees." And so it's a very interesting topic. Maybe Andrew can talk to us about that um, also. With birch syrup, it takes 100 gallons of birch sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. With maple syrup, it takes about 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. So birch syrup
Hmm.
is a premium product, and it has it's kind of a different kind of a flavor. It's more of a bitter flavor, but it's very interesting.
I would try that for sure.
Yeah.
Skip, I want to spin us briefly, hopefully briefly, in a little different direction. And I have a sense that this is one of those areas where you and I are going to disagree. And that has to do with this agricultural product registration. So I didn't know, for the sake of our audience, I didn't know prior to right now that Skip was involved in sending this letter. But my immediate reaction to that is reluctance, resistance to any such categorization of maple syrup as an agricultural product. Here's why. And then, Skip, I'd like your feedback on this.
Hmm.
Starting with tax incentives and tax credits for people who do certain amounts of growing on their properties and sell above a certain amount, you can qualify for tax credits for gardening. You can grow peppers, corn, etc., and sell it on your curbside. And if you're above a certain a threshold, you get a tax credit. The problem that people are starting to discover with that is you then are added to a registry, which means you're then tracked and followed and have to report to the government, both local and state and perhaps federal. And there are people that are experiencing significant blowback and impediment from government because you're added to a registry. And to make an extreme case of that, everyone I know is opposed to a gun registry. Nobody wants a gun registry. We don't want to be on a list somewhere, tracked and monitored and measured and impeded and threatened if on a gun registry. Some people in farming, especially small farmers who are right around that threshold, are choosing to forego the tax credit in order to be able to be left alone and do what they want to do. My concern, and Skip, you may know about this and maybe have some feedback, but if maple syrup is added to an agricultural product category and then some people get a few dollars of tax credit, does that then mean my expectation is then you're going to get people who are able to come onto your property. They're going to assess, and the rules and regulations may change over time, and they're going to assess fees, like we're now discovering in Geauga County on septic and etc. I think it opens Pandora's box to government oversight and regulatory creep if we add things like maple syrup to a big quote unquote tax exempt registry. It ends up costing way more than it's worth in my book. What do you think on that?
Well, the tax credits that we're talking about, and I forget the exact term right now, has been a common practice for quite a while. It keeps our, tax, our farmers are not a high margin business. And so, if you're farming, trees, for example, that's if you've got a large piece of property, you got a lot of trees on it, and periodically you glean those trees, you qualify for federal and state tax offset. It's not a credit as in you pay no taxes. You just get a reduction in your taxes because you're using that property for farming. It helps keep farmers in business. Keeps that farm a farm and not something that somebody would develop. I don't think there's any. I don't know this is a fact because I don't take those tax credits. I've not been in that situation. I don't think there's any intrusive tracking that goes out outside of they know, the auditor knows whose property because you get property tax offsets for that, or I forget the term now again, but you get tax offsets for
Oh,
properties.
Skip, I need to step in. We need to go to break.
Oh,
We'll
sorry.
come back with more on the other side of the break.
Sure.
Mics are off. Mics are off. Red spot is playing in this break. The red spot is playing.
Thanks, Thomas. By the way, your microphone is bad. It's kind of choppy. I can hear you though. So yeah, that's something. It's kind of a sticky wicket. The the experience that I've had and the feedback from, and this is not any formal examination or anything, but just anecdotally speaking, as soon as any sort of farm or property is on a list somewhere, if you are, and we see it out west all the time, and in Pennsylvania with dairy. So dairy farmers signed up to get tax credits, and now look what's happening. And they're going in and shutting down dairy farms. If you're on a registry for having chickens, if somebody sees that there's the next COVID bird flu pandemic, Zika virus or whatever in some chicken somewhere in Texas, they just come and kill your whole flock. Um, those things really worry me. And we see a growing amount of government intrusion into private industry and private property. They have no
30
respect.
seconds. 30 seconds.
Our government has no respect, generally speaking, for private property. We have to fight for every inch that we have.
Ten seconds. 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Before we dive back into our topic, I want to draw everybody's attention to Voice of Geauga on Facebook. We've released another poll. We'd like to ask your opinion. Do you trust local media to cover the new inbound electees, the people who've been elected to receive fair treatment from local legacy media? Do you believe, and this is a poll that's on Facebook right now, it's shared in many groups and was released by Voice of Geauga on our page. Do you trust local legacy media to cover people like Steve Olowich, inbound commissioner Steve Olowich, fairly? So we'd like your opinion on that. Back to the topic, we're talking about different registries: county registry, state registry, and federal registry. And there are all kinds of different things that can be registered. Dairy farm, for instance, and we see some issues with that in places like Pennsylvania, where the government has stepped in and decided that certain types of dairy farmers are not permitted, and they're taking livestock. They're actually, I believe, they're taking them away and slaughtering. And so the government is deciding, not the property owner. And out west, we have Bureau of Labor and the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, Bureau of Land Management, where people registered certain acreage, but then later we see the federal government stepped in and said that under the banner of fire management and brush management, they've taken control of certain properties. So there are examples all over the place of people signing up on a registry. They get a little bit of some sort of tax rebate or tax help or something briefly, but then end up losing property rights. And the comment that I made during the break is that I personally have very little to zero confidence in our government's respect for our private property rights. So that's where I'm coming from with that. Skip, I appreciate you humoring me on that question. I know it's kind of threw you a curveball.
That's all right, but a CAUV, it came to me over the break, is the tax
Oh,
exemption
yeah,
we're talking about, CAUV. So certain farmers can qualify, well, all farmers can qualify if they're doing farming. And so CAUV is a pretty common, it has to do with your property tax. It's a property tax exemption. And by the way, if we do away with property tax, that exemption goes away and we approach the issue where we got to keep farmers in business in a different way. But COUV is only one of a number of tax exemptions in Ohio. So we have the homestead exemption. We have people owner occupied, people over 65 get an exemption. Disabled veterans get an exemption. Surviving spouses get an extension. So there's all kind or an exemption. So there's all kinds of exemptions. I wouldn't call them registries. They're not registered per se. And I will say, regardless of any registry, the government is involved. If you're a dairy farmer, there's all kinds of rules and regulations. You are registered. If you're raising pigs or chickens or soybeans, you're on a list from a farm perspective. Like you, I'm very nervous about government intrusion into any of those activities because people should be free to be able to use their property in any way, shape, or form. One of the biggest issues that I have, and this isn't so much government, although it's got a government involvement, is the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. Because the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, if you got large pieces of property and those signs are popping up on properties across Geauga County, destroys private property rights. So
yep,
any owner that goes into the Western Reserve Land Conservancy gives up their rights to control that property. The controlling interest in that property now is the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, which is a dark group. You don't even know exactly who they are. They can transfer those rights to other conservancy interests and so forth. It's in perpetuity forever and ever. So forever somebody enters their property into the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, the property rights on those properties, the private property rights now are given up. If you farm, you have to farm according to the rules set by the Western Reserve Land Conservancy, and there's no oversight on the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. At least within government, we have some legislative oversight. Western Reserve Land Conservancy, there is no oversight. It's a dark board that sets the rules, and I've read, I don't know, probably 30 contracts having to do with Western Reserve Land Conservancy. We just at the county owns property and we put it into a conservancy. I'm not sure why we did that because if you own the property, you protect it. The best way to protect property and keep it farm property is to have a farmer own it because farmers will defend
yeah,
their property rights to the end of the earth. But
yep.
in any case, I'm not sure exactly how we got off onto that topic of, but this comes back to, I'm going to connect this back in and wrap this back around into President Trump's visit to China. And
Okay.
here's how I'm gonna connect the two. If you live in
I'm
a
waiting for this segue.
Yeah, there you go. I'm pretty good at this actually, connecting the dots. So if you live in a communist country, there is no private property rights at all in a communist country. The communist government controls everything, and it's centralized control. So in the United States, when our founders set up our government, they knew that a government by the people for the people, you need to keep government close at hand. And so it was broken down into modules. So you have states and you have counties and you have townships. Some states don't have townships. Arizona is an example. They have municipalities. And you see bigger issues in those because you don't have local government that you can go and talk to and control. Your control is best when you have local government close to you, and you can see. It's easier to see the financing and how they do things, and you can elect people you don't like because you always get bad apples in there. And if you've got one bad apple in the Communist Party, you destroy the whole country. Right now, Xi is seems like a pretty reasonable guy, but in the past they've had some pretty notorious bad leaders in China, and they murdered millions and millions of people actually. So
Yeah,
I've heard as a part of the property tax abolishment discussion that they want to regionalize schools into, say, one school to save cost, and
that's one possibility.
so you have one superintendent for the whole county. That's a horrible idea. Number one, you're not going to save any cost because
I agree with
there's
you
a
on this.
span of control issue where one person can't, oversee a huge organization. So you have to add layers to accommodate that span of control. So, and it's always best, for local, like West G is not the same as Kinston School or the same as Berkshire School. The values of the parents and the residents that live there are different. They want their schools to approach things differently. So having a local control mechanism is always best in our form of government, in my opinion. And so that way you can keep some of these things you were talking about, Jonathan, in terms of tracking people and uh, and having government oversight and control. You can keep that limited. Townships don't have the ability to create ordinances and the ability to make law and to create ordinances like cities do. So that's the reason I chose to live in a township, because they have less intrusion on the citizens that live there. If I want to go shoot in my backyard, I can go shoot in my backyard. There's no Ohio law that prevents me in a township as long as I do it safely and
Defend your township,
and so forth. That's
everyone.
right.
If you're in a township or like American values, absolutely defend your township. And as a related note, everyone should know there is an Ohio Township Association, OTA. I've only recently become aware of this, but this is it's sort of a statewide group that meet and talk about township related issues on a pretty regular basis. And these should be defended with everything we've got. And yes, there is a big push. And unfortunately, it is significantly, and I'm air quoting this, both sides of the aisle. You're going to find people within today's Republican Party and significantly the predominance of people associated with today's left and the Democrat Party who love regionalism and state control. They have fallen in love with the idea of big government. It's across the board and it's written on everything that they're saying and doing right now. But I want to interject something. It took me a moment to find it, Skip. You know how sometimes life presents something to you in a variety of ways and it just keeps coming back onto your radar? I'm really glad that moments ago you mentioned CAUV. It took me a moment to make the connection. I'm going to suggest that your friend and mine, John Kalis, come on and join us on this program because recently in a lengthy phone conversation, I had John Kalis talking about the tremendous importance of CAUV. It's something that he has researched, and it took me a minute to find it, but just a couple of weeks ago, he sent me on April 25th a huge document via email on exactly that subject, CAUV. That's something that, according to John Kalis, who I trust, I like him, but that's a hint, by the way. Go find his Substack, John Kalis, Kalas, and follow John Kalis. So that's something I'm teasing out for the future. I hope that we're able to come back to CAUV and that subject, maybe with John Kalis on as a guest. We're coming up on our middle break. Don't forget, I'd like to ask you to find us on social media. That's Voice of Geauga on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and even X. We're not very active yet on X, but planning to grow it. Find us there, like, follow, click that subscribe button, click the bell so you get notices when we go live. And by all means, please share it around with friends. Let's continue to spread the word of Voice of Geauga. We're going to come back with more on the other side of the break.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
All right, Skip, I'm going to forward this email from John Kalis. I'm thinking this is probably something that you're going to understand more quickly than me. This is pretty far removed from anything I've had exposure to. There we go. Got your email address. I'm forwarding it now. Take a look, if you would, and see if you agree with me. But I mean, on that and many other subjects, I think it would be, personally, I think it'd be good for us to have John Kalis on as a guest.
He's always, I've invited him a number of times. He's always been nervous about coming on because of his work situation. And so on this topic, he may be willing to do it. On the WACA, he's not been willing to do it for probably obvious
We got to
reasons.
respect that. Whatever his circumstance and reasoning, if he's not comfortable coming on air, that's a-okay.
But I wanted to respond to a comment yet real quick. Gardens of CH made yesterday, and she used my name, and so I'm going to respond to it real quick before we get back on air for the people that are listening on Rumble. There was a conversation in the commissioner meeting, and I had brought up the fact that we're double paying for the library building, which the senior citizens are now going to be moving into. And so I applauded Ralph Spitaleri's comment on and what he did, and actually did a real nice job. I thought he went on and on for quite a while. But the one area where we disagree a bit is the fact that we are paying for a building that taxpayers already paid for. It's a concept that I have an issue with, and it's okay for friends to disagree on that thing. And I'm not sitting in the room hearing all of the discussions that he's heard. I do think it's important that the senior center have a good place to go. They've been bouncing around our county for quite a few years now, and that is a great building. They'll have a good permanent location, hopefully. But should we have paid 3 point whatever millions of dollars for that building, I probably would disagree with that. But you know, I'm open-minded to listening to the complete case, and I don't have all the facts. I have what I have heard and saw on the. But so Gardens, for you know, and I have talked to Ralph about that. He knows I don't agree with that particular element of it, but I do think he did a nice job of trying to explain the mindset on it and the fact that they needed to move forward and get off the nickel on that. And the Department on Aging does deserve to have a place to go, and they're not in control, although they should be. It's a separate agency. They shouldn't be having to go through the county to make those decisions anyway, I don't think. But that's. I just wanted to give you that explanation, Garden, so you know where I'm coming from. It's okay to disagree with our friends, but and we can still challenge that idea because it's kind of a goofy thing. You know, we pay for a building, taxpayers, and now we got to pay for it again. I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but so anyway, there's that. And Sharon, and I'm back.
Okay.
So
Yep, I
yeah,
can hear you.
Sharon talked about the fact that they hung a bucket on a pine tree
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
to make pine saw.
Well, Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent, your hosts today. You can join us on air on WINT Radio by dialing in 440-946-9468 if you're on social media. The number is posted there, but of course, you can also post in the comments, and we're getting lots of lively comments as usual. So where we left off was actually just before the break. I was bringing up the significance of CAUV. If you're like me and our listening audience, you may want to go out and start informing yourself on CAUV. What does that stand for again, Skip? Do you
It
recall off
stands,
the top of your head?
yeah, it's current agricultural use value. So
Right.
the government has deemed it appropriate, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with this. If you're farming property, then they value that property. So when you're looking at property tax, there's the value and there's property value. And so when you have a large piece of property, unlike the home that I live on, I have 5 acres. The home on my property is worth way more than the property. But in a farmer's situation, the property is worth way more, and so they're being taxed pretty heavily on this large piece of property. And to keep farmers going and in business, there's a property tax reduction possible depending on what you're farming. And they've changed that and reduced it quite a bit. They used to be very liberal with it and give it to everybody for all kinds of reasons. You could say I'm farming ants, and then just show them you got ants on your property, and
Farming ants.
and then they would
Hey,
give you, it's hard to
Skip
milk.
it.
It's hard to milk those ants, but I mean,
Well, based on what I see in what used to be a simple and easy to understand dairy section in grocery stores, apparently anything can be milked now. I don't, the vast array of different things that fall into the banner of milk is mystifying to me. But let's pause that conversation because it looks like we have Jan joining us from Chesterland. Jan, you're on Voice of Geauga. What's up?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. I was one of the people that talked to Skip yesterday at the senior dinner, and Jonathan, I talked to you at the candidates night, whenever that was, a month ago. Anyways, I just wanted to call in and reiterate what I told both of you gentlemen that I really do appreciate the program. I discovered it about 2 months ago, just by accident, and I really do appreciate the information that you make available to the public, and I do think it was a factor in the recent primary election. So, thanks for all of your efforts. I think it's difficult for people to dig into the nitty gritty the way you guys have been doing, and in a way, you guys are the closest thing to investigative reporters that we've seen around here in a long time. So I do appreciate what you're doing, and thank you so much because it's been very helpful to me, and I'll do what I can to support your program. So,
Wow. Jan, thank you very much. That is really encouraging feedback. Greatly appreciated. And we're
yeah,
glad. We hope that lots of people feel the way that you do. We're passionate about Geauga County, and we don't want to see it go. We don't want to lose what just the beautiful magic that is Geauga County. So,
yeah. On the subject you're talking about this morning, a couple months ago, I received a postcard from some organization asking me to tell them how I dispose of manure on my property. And I don't
oh,
own horses, so I don't know why I got this solicitation from them. But that's just another opportunity for intrusion. And they kind of couched it as, well, this is a great economic opportunity for people in Geauga County to tell us all about, how many horses do they have and where do they, do they dispose of manure on site? Do they send it off site? What do they do? And I thought, why do you need to know this? And again, it's an example of intrusion where property owners are um, not needing this kind of assistance. So, anyways,
that's a great example. And I'll chime in with one other. And I've actually worked on trying to get some people from this family to come on air and join us either on Voice of Geauga or one of the other podcasts that I do. But there is a sixth generation farming family that lost their property. It's not in Geauga County. This one in particular is not in Geauga County. It's elsewhere in Ohio, but it is clearly under the thumb of Ohio rules, laws, and regulations. And I'll sum up. I got in a phone conversation off the record, I got one of the grandsons to outline, but I'll just paraphrase the series of events that led to them losing all of their farmland. And that is, well, two things at once. One, I'm not sure that I do enough. I'd love to be doing 10 times more to protect farmers. That is a huge piece of where my heart is. But in this particular instance, this farm fell under certain types of rules because at one point in the past, it used to be marshland or something in that similar category. The government came in and started to tell them that they needed to have certain requirements, and there were check boxes, and some of them included having outhouses or porta potties rather at certain distances out in the fields. And they were like, "What are you talking about, dude? Nobody needs to use a porta potty," but they were required to, so they rented them. Then they had to be inspected, and they had to check and review the timetable for when they were picked up and hauled away and cleaned out and removed and replaced. And meanwhile, nobody was actually using them, or hardly anybody. And then at one point, they came in and did an evaluation and thought that they found remnants of deer poop on or near some of the vegetables and the lettuce products. And so they required that the farmers destroy that entire section of the field because deer poop might have something or other in it. It was just on and on and on. That gives the example. These are the kinds of things. At some point, that farming family got signed up for something, and permitted get some sort of tax incentive that probably seemed great for a little while, and then lo and behold, poof, they're on this list for certain types of farming, certain types of animal husbandry, a certain percentage of acreage, and the left the government came in and attacked them, and they lost all their farmland. They couldn't afford, after a while, all of the layers and layers of bureaucratic red tape and extra requirements like these ridiculous porta potties that they didn't want but were required to have. My point is that we need to be cautious about those things, and it started with that conversation around agricultural product. What is an agricultural product? And if maple syrup is added to that, I have concerns, and I don't think we would be doing our job if we didn't maybe push the pause button on those sorts of things because we see that abuse. Ohio, unfortunately, happens to be one of those states, and we're further left than California and not allowing human consumption of cow milk. We require California, you can go to a farm and buy actual cow's milk. Here, you cannot do that. It has to be labeled a pet product or whatever. That's an example of our government stepping in. And here in Geauga County, people battling, I'm one of them, with our health department on these septic systems. You're on the queue, you're on the list, and so it seems like every 3 weeks I get some new bill, $30 or $125 or $290 or whatever. And supposedly this system that I don't know, cost $29,000 or whatever it was, supposedly every 6 months I need to have contracts and I need to have people on my property, and it, these things are sold to the public as public good, but what they're doing is enriching government and bureaucratic agencies and taking money from we the people. So I'll
And
get off
all
my
of these things
soapbox on
are
that.
unconstitutional, and we need to get people in office that can see from that perspective. Um, but anyways, I appreciate again what you're doing, and I need to get off. So thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
calling
Jan.
in,
Thank
Jim.
you. Yeah,
Greatly
I
appreciated.
can't tell you that. I didn't know we were going to get off on an agricultural topic today, but
Hey, it's Geauga County, Sam.
sometimes we go off in the weeds on all these things, and there's a lot we could say. I'm a freedom kind of guy, and like with the septic systems, you know, rather than have all the oversight, we just hold people accountable for their systems working. And if you don't, if you come, the health department has a responsibility to make sure, because there's some irresponsible people that don't maintain their septic systems, and then it pours raw sewage into our streams and so forth. And I don't agree with that. I think that those people should be dinged if that they find that to be the case. But don't set up a bunch of rules where you can come out and monitor us and require us to do tests all the time and blah blah blah. Just find those homes that are in violation, that don't have a working system, and ding them, and don't penalize the rest of us. But a lot of that had to do. Our current rules have to do with the lobby, so it's not government per se, but the government was lobbied by the sewer company um, lobby, and had them change the rules so you can put in these higher cost, more difficult to maintain kind of sewer systems. I lived through that with John Eklund was our state senator, and our past health department gentleman and I spent a lot of time talking about this very topic. But that said, and we're kind of off on a government control versus not conspiracy kind of a thing, and not all conspiracies are wrong. They're not all uh, theories. Some of them are real, and so government tends to screw up everything it touches. And so,
Skip, I'm getting a notice here that we need to go to break.
okay,
Stay tuned. We're going to come back with more discussion with Voice of Geauga on the other side of the break.
Mics are off. Mics are off.
so Stu, I'm not sure what you're trying to tell us. We have
Oh, is Stu back on?
yeah, Stu sent us a message with 3 garbage cans with somebody throwing something in a garbage can. I'm not sure what that means exactly. It's a little cryptic, Stu, but thank you for joining the program. He contributes
It's your buddy.
every time he
Buddy's
shows
back.
up, so that's fantastic. And the goofy, who's the goofy lady? It's a senator, I think, from Massachusetts or someplace. She's got to be like 90 years old and has purple hair, and she
Oh, yeah.
pounded her fist on the in a hearing and said, "Don't allow anybody to drink whole milk." I grew up on whole milk. I mean, real milk. I used to go out and
Yeah.
with my grandfather in the morning and milk the cows, and then we'd go separate cream, and my grandmother would make butter with an old wooden churn, and so I'd just drink the milk right out of the teat, and I survived. It was no problem.
Yeah.
So
Well, my view is that you're stronger for it. You have a better immune system. But I mean, it's just like all these things that we look at. I mean, your local produce, local honey, those kinds of things, they're way healthier. I can't find anything realistic that I would possibly put any trust in that thinks that the chemically produced quasi agricultural product from some third world country that's shipped here via a diesel tanker and delivered into your local grocery store, that's got a huge list of ingredients,
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
most of which you can't pronounce, is somehow supposedly better than the thing that is local here. A neighbor's dairy product should be available to us. And it's mystifying to me. In Ohio, it's not.
I forget the name of the
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Skip, as we were coming back from the break, you were beginning to make a comment.
Yeah, I can't remember. There's a large dairy farm, and I can't remember their name now, here in Geauga County, and they sell milk right out of a refrigerator. I mean, they have the stalls. The cows come in, they milk them automatically. It's actually, I mean, I've got some friends who are farmers over in Orwell, Ohio. And they have a huge dairy farm, and the cows are programmed to come in. Nobody even touches the cows anymore. They have a machine that automatically hooks them up and milks them, and there's no human involvement. It's all, they've got chips in them. The cows, they've been
What?
trained to go into the stanchion, and they walk into the stanchion. The machine sees their teats. It hooks up the machine. It milks them. They get done. They walk out of there, and
Robotic milking.
there's a robotic milker, and it's I'm like in shock. They also have GPS farm equipment that goes around and plows and plants seeds and does all that kind of stuff automatically. It's just it's shocking to me. And AI is going to make this even bigger. And eventually we're going to get maple syrup out of the trees by putting a chip in the tree and having some sort of a milking machine milking the sap out of the tree. I don't know. It's a crazy world we're coming into, but. Um,
I just worry about any. Here's my reaction to that. And you're right. We unexpectedly took a detour in our conversation, but it's a good one and it's important. I can think of few things as important as farming and local food. And I made the comment earlier during one of the breaks. I can't imagine anybody making an argument that some quasi dairy derivative product that's created in some third world country somewhere that includes some dairy, but also a bunch of list of ingredients that you can't pronounce, and then is shipped via diesel tanker over to the US and then distributed to local uh, supposed grocery stores, that in any way, shape, or form is nearly as healthy as going to some local farm and getting local produce. That includes honey and your vegetables and dairy and meat, etc. And on the thing you're talking about, Skip, my immediate reaction, I mean no offense to anybody. Farming is hard. It's hard work. And I can understand the appeal of trying to automate, but I have a lot of questions about that farm if they are the type of farm that is willing to cower to and acquiesce to all the government regulations. And if they're one of those farms that does the whole vast array of different injections and shots and hormonal treatments and stuff that they inject into cows, they're so full of chemicals these days. It is bewildering. I lean toward, actually, I strongly crave those farms and places that produce with as little intrusion as possible, without spraying wax on the outside of the fruit or vegetable, without harmful, nasty, cancer causing, allegedly cancer causing um, uh, uh, herbicides, with as natural as possible. I love the local honey, local produce, and those sorts of things. And I think ultimately my point as voice of Geauga is if we want to keep those things, we have to fight for them. I'm telling you, people, the people in charge of these sorts of things, and look at the behavior of the health department. They and I mean no disrespect there. I actually know that there are some great people who care. They're patriotic, wonderful beings, good people who work at the health department. They're caught up in a bureaucratic system that's full of red tape and frequently does not care about the health and well-being and autonomy and property rights of Geauga citizens. So it's a difficult circumstance and difficult environment. Those kinds of things we're going to keep access to only based upon our willingness to fight for them.
So, we're very lucky here in Geauga County because we have a lot of farmers, and you can go to Geauga Meats over on 422 and buy locally grown beef and pork and chicken and so forth. We're very fortunate in Geauga County. We have, and in order to keep those farms and businesses in business, we need to frequent them. And it might be slightly more expensive, but I grew up every fall we'd have pigs and we'd go out and slaughter the pigs ourselves and cut them up and then distribute them within the family. And so I grew up on meats. It was just I had to slop them and feed them every morning, which the first time we did a slaughter kind of shocked me a little bit because I was taking care of that pig and I named them and was petting them every morning. The next thing I know, we're shooting them in the head and cutting them apart. First time doing that was a bit of a shock to me, but I understood the cycle of life, and they had a really good life, and then one bad moment in their life, and then we had meat all went along. But I want to give people a tip, by the way. I've recently started to make my own potato chips,
Oh,
and so you can make a bag of potato chips with one, depending on the potatoes, 1 to 2 potatoes, and I do it in the microwave. You can buy these silicone discs, which are intended for this purpose, and you take a mandolin slicer and you slice them into you know thin potato slices, and then you put them on this silicone thing with some salt. That's all you put on them, no other ingredients, and then throw them in the microwave for 10 minutes, and they come out potato chips, and they are fantastic. So my
can
wife,
I add beef tallow?
you could if you wanted to. I'm not sure why
I
you
think I want
would,
to.
because you don't. There's no oil required. They become a
Oh,
potato chip with no oil at all. Now there is a recipe that allows you to, you coat them with olive oil or some other oil that you choose, maybe beef tallow, and you can put them in the oven at 400 degrees. I've been trying that, and that's way more tricky than just putting them in the microwave for 10 minutes. But my wife and I have gone away from buying potato chips right now because we really like, and then I make my own homemade chip dip with just onions and sour cream, and a little. I throw a little yogurt in there, Greek yogurt, to add a little tang to it. But
I wonder if we could add recipes to Voice of
I
Geauga.
think we
I
should.
bet you there's some people in
I think
our
we should.
audience, including, you may not know this, but our very own Scoop Claypool is pretty accomplished in the kitchen.
I make my
He, and he,
we make our own bread every week. So 2 cups of flour, Geauga County maple syrup, a quarter cup of olive oil, and a pinch of salt, and a tablespoon of, well, actually, a little less than a tablespoon of yeast. You need that. You let it rise twice, and you bake it. It's fantastic bread. So very,
Now, my
very good.
wife would chime in with questions about where the flour comes from and how it's processed because she's big on that. And she actually likes heritage, what is it called? Heritage Essentials or Heritage Naturals, whatever it's called, in Middlefield. Apparently, they have very good flour there. So these are the kinds of things. And yes, this is an offshoot, but it's also important. So, yeah, Skip and I talk a lot about local politics. They have big influence. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the mission of Voice of Geauga is for us to be able to have that breathing room to live more like Americans, to have freedom, to have liberty, to pursue health and happiness. There are some really great comments here. We're running out of time, but there's some comments from Gardens of CH about wanting people, government wanting us to rat on our neighbors for pollution, septic control sorts of issues. That's not surprising. Do not let government build a pond on your property. They will not let you use your own land. Family members apparently experienced that. So the horror stories go on and on. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but hopefully you found today's discussion informative and interesting. Don't forget, go to voiceofgeauga.com and please, if you're able to, help financially support. That's the mission now, to keep us going for more great episodes like today's. Thanks
Join us
everybody for
tomorrow with
tuning in.
Red EFT, who's going to be joining us, a tree guy. And so come
Yep,
back
7
tomorrow
a.m.
morning,
tomorrow morning.
bring some
Red
friends,
out.
pass the word, post us, like us, do all that kind of stuff. We'll
Excellent.
see you
Have a great
tomorrow.
day, everyone.